Yeah, I don't know why. Oh, for 60 apart.
You're going to move this over here. Right, or right hand. Bigger ball. Give it a
Beg your pardon? That wasn't nearly long enough. It was muffled by something. It's got to be a sharp, crisp blow. Yeah, you're in a mask.
Okay. Just a little something, and thanks everybody for coming tonight. We have some interesting things we're going to discuss. And it's nice to be able to hold as best we can open meetings, and because we can't really hold them in the chambers because we're too small to get the social distancing we need. So thanks for following the rules. And unfortunately, we were doing where we used to take the masks off. We're in the rooms. There's a new directive from Public Health today that if you're in a room like this, you leave your masks on. So that's why we have our masks on. So did everybody hear all right? We tried to make sure these not too good. Okay. So I would ask all the counselors and everything to try to speak into the mic as best as possible. Okay. All right. So I call the meeting to order. Any disclosure or any pecuniary interest of the conflict of interest? Seeing none. Previous minutes. Moved by Councillor Dirksen, second by Councillor Gunson. The minutes of the September 1st, 2020 Town of Minto Council meeting be approved. All in favor? Carried. Additional items? I might have some here. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor McKenzie. Resolution moving council into the committee of the whole to consider public meetings, delegations, public questions, correspondence, reports, motions, and which notices have been previously given, and other businesses. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor McKenzie. The Town of Minto Council convenes in the committee of the whole. All in favor? Carried. Well, we have a public meeting, exciting public meeting, and for the OPA amendment, draft plan subdivision, zone amendment, next developments. I will chair the public meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. I request any member of the public present to please sign the attendance record and state the following. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting, to make written submissions to the County of Wellington before the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision is adopted, the persons or public body may not be added as party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasons and grounds to do so. Clerk McRobb, by the way, you're now clerk, so
Thank you.
nice to see that. The acting is gone. Clerk McRobb, state your municipal address and legal description of the property and purpose of the applications, the date notices are sent.
Thank you, Mayor Bridge. The land subject to the proposed amendments are legally described as part of Lot 88, Concession D, Minto, part of Park Lot E and F, Preston Survey D, Minto, Town of Harriston, parts of Lot 88, Concession D, Geographic Township of Minto, Town of Minto, County of Wellington. The subject property has a total of 10.369 hectares. The purpose and effect of the proposed official plan amendment is to redesignate the subject land from future development and core green lands to residential. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the lands from future development, floodway, and institutional to open space, and residential single, semi, and townhouse dwelling. The amendments are required in order to facilitate the proposed draft plan of subdivision. The application for an official plan amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and zone amendment will result in the creation of mixed-density residential development. Specifically, the overall proposal will create 66 single-detached residential lots, 11 semi-detached residential lots, which is 22 units, and 6 townhouse blocks, which is 44 units. The notices were mailed to the property owners within 400 feet or 120 meters of the subject property as well as the applicable agencies, August 27, 2020, and posted on the subject property. The notice was also circulated in the local community newspaper on August 27, 2020. Comments were received from the Senior Planner of County Wellington, the Planning Consultants, the Town of Minto Engineering, the Technical Services Supervisor of the County of Wellington, Environmental Planner, Regulations Officer for MVCA, and the Senior Planner for Upper Grand District School Board, and as well Eric D'Souza, Real Estate Assistant for Hydro One Networks, and the Manager for Municipal Relations, Bell Canada.
Okay, I'll call on the applicant or agent to provide comments regarding the proposed amendments to the County of Wellington Official Plan Amendment, Draft Plan, Subdivision and Zone Amendment. And here we are.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a presentation. It'll be very quick. It's just trying to. Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Astrid Claus. I'm a planning consultant here on behalf of Max Developments, Inc. I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. Okay. So on the second slide, this is the surrounding land uses, and to the north are the residential homes fronting onto Lawrence Street West. To the east is a retirement home and single detached dwellings fronting onto Laura Street South. And to the south are the agricultural lands located outside the Harrison urban boundary. And to the west are the former railway lands and agricultural lands located again outside the Harrison urban boundary. So on the next slide, this is the County of Wellington official plan, the existing designation of the property. The property itself is outlined in red, so you can see there's a future development, which is the white area, and core green lands, which reflects the 100-year floodline. Just the north part of the property is within the built boundary, but the majority of the property is within the greenfield area. And then slide 4, the next slide, which shows what is the proposed official plan amendment. So the yellow areas are the redesignated residential areas, and the core green land is proposed to be revised to reflect the revised floodplain. And so that's reflected there. The next slide shows the existing zoning. There's the white area, or the FD, is the future development, and then you can see sort of some dots, that's flood fringe, and then the flood, FL is floodway. And then there's a wellhead protection overlay. And then the next slide will show what we're proposing to zone 2. So where you see an R3, that's where the townhouses are proposed. R2 is the zone proposed for the semi-detached and single-detached. The OS is stormwater and park. And FD, there's a small future development block as well. It'll actually be more obvious on one of the future slides that's in color. And FL is for the revised floodplain. And I note that there are no specialized zoning uses or regulations that have been requested, so they're proceeding with the straightforward zones that are in the bylaw. And so this is a breakdown of essentially the different lot types or uses. So 66 single detached, 22 semi-detached units, 40 townhouse units for a total of 128. And I just wanted to mention that the province has established density targets which are required to be implemented by municipal official plans. And this application will assist the town in meeting its greenfield area density target. The minimum greenfield area density target is 16 units per hectare. And this proposal has a density of 16 units per hectare. So we'll meet that minimum target which is in the county official plan from the provincial numbers. So the next slide is, so this is the proposed draft plan of subdivision in color. The dark green kind of at the top, that's the proposed park. Orange, the orangish tone, those are the proposed townhouse blocks. And then there's more of a brownish tone. You can see those are the semi-detached lots, and they're 18.3 meters or 60 feet before they get divided into two for the semis. And the lightest color are the single detached, so those are 40-foot lots as a minimum. The lighter green are the open space and stormwater management areas. And yeah, I think that's everything there. So I also just wanted to note that we received the circulation comments, and we'll be working through the comments and providing any technical responses where that is required. That concludes my presentation. I do note that the owner and the project engineer are in attendance, and we'd all be pleased to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. You just have a seat. I'll ask anybody. Michelle, I didn't ask you up, but it wasn't written down this way, but did you want to make any comments from the county?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only, perhaps only additional information I could provide is just to reiterate that this is the statutory public meeting for 3 applications: the official plan amendment, the draft plan of subdivision, and the zoning bylaw amendment. And then the only other item that hasn't been covered off was next steps. So if that would be helpful for council, I could just advise that following the public meeting, staff will finalize the technical review of the draft plan of subdivision and the applications to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw. Staff will then report back to council for local consideration of both the draft plan of subdivision, including conditions of draft approval, and the official plan amendment for council endorsement. And once we had those 2 items completed, then we could come back and forward an implementing zoning bylaw should that all move along favorably.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Okay, let's turn it over to anybody wishing to speak in favor. And I know Jerry's here. Did you want to say any words, Jerry, or just want to wait for it? You good? Good. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, and then also, then I would comment anybody in opposition to the proposed plan. Not seeing anything. Okay. Questions from the council? Councilor McKenzie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Will the streets be named at one point, or are they going to stay letters?
I believe they'll be named, and we'll go through our policy for naming streets with veterans.
Thank you.
Because I assume that's, once we take them over, I believe, we have to wait till we take them over.
Right.
Yeah. We've done that in previous subdivisions in Palmerston. Now we've just done one recently. You did a couple in the industrial park once we got them back in.
Thank you.
Ron?
My question would be, is the parks are supposed to be a percentage of the amount of land or the amount of subdivision. Is that enough park land that we're getting for?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did provide some comments in the report with respect to parkland, and forgive me, I don't have the exact area that was provided memorized. A preliminary calculation of the park of being 0.17 hectares seems to represent about 1.6% of the area, and so the Planning Act does require 5%. So in the report, I've just advised that the town should indicate through this process what the preference is. Is it looking to achieve the 5% in this particular development? Is it looking to achieve a portion of parkland and a portion of cash in lieu, or would it all be cash in lieu? So that's something that we'll be working with the town staff on to establish, and then alongside the developer and their consultants.
And then just on that, there's quite a bit of a green area where the storm management's going to be, and I think I read somewhere in the report that it won't have water in it all the time. I believe it's not going to be full of water. It'll be just when we need it for storm, right? Yeah, if you want to make sure, and the reason I want to mention that is that's quite a large area, and it'll be a good passive park as well for people that they'll be able to use, right?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the storm pond is a dry pond, which means only during storm events would it have water in it. Now, there is some fencing requirements in the town bylaw that we would have to meet. The other thing, in the floodland, we do new plan, there's easement so that we could run a path along Dredge Creek and behind the unit and back around. So there will be some active networks there as well.
So we could even look at the trail.
That's what we've shown in our proposal, that there would be a trail. I don't know if it shows it on the draft plan, but along the park, or along the pond, at the south end of the pond, there's an easement there, and then towards the south end of the unit, there's another area there of green space, and that way we have people access and a network through there.
Thank you.
No problem.
David?
Thank you, Mayor Bridge. Kim, I have a couple more questions for you. I did stand and talk to Kim for a couple of moments, and I understand that she's been out talking to neighbors and explaining to people what's going on. And is that a good reason why there's no objection or nobody here tonight? I hope that's the reason. I would think that's the reason.
Yeah, we've had active communication
Yes.
with our neighbors. Yeah.
That's great. Question on Street D is the one coming off the Laura. This development will be joined up with John Street sometime. Right, so there's a couple ways to get in.
Yeah, so there were comments from the engineer on Street D, and we will have to address that and see what the preference will be there. From our perspective, we're only running water main through that street. We're talking to our traffic engineer about whether or not it's required for emergency services. At our pre-planning meeting, another access was requested for that reason. Now, again, we'll talk to our traffic engineer. There were some concerns with its alignment with Jesse Street. We will be addressing Street D in our comments back, and in consultation with the town, what the preference there is.
Great, thank you. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, but at this point, Street D, there's a narrower road allowance there, that's what we have room for, but, yeah, it, again, will be reflected in our comments.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Just a final comment. I just want to say, Gary, and to your staff and to your planners, well done. I like the way it's laid out. I love the fact that we're actually getting some of our density up that we need. And I'm hopeful that the price point comes in where we can help with some of our situations with affordable housing, not affordable, I guess affordable housing, but somewhere where we can get people in that first house type thing. And some of the units will be smaller, but they'll have an opportunity. And that's certainly needed in Harrison and needed in the area. So thanks very much for all your work on this. All right. I will state if you wish to be notified of the adoption of the proposed official plan amendment 2020-02 or the draft plan of subdivision 23T-2021 or of the refusal of a request to amend the official plan, you must make a written request to the Director of Planning and Development Department, County of Wellington, 74 Woolwich Street, Guelph, Ontario, N1H 3T9, which to be notified of the adoption of the proposed zoning amendment ZBA 2023, including information about the appeal rights. You must make a written request to the clerk of the town of Minto, 5941 Highway 89, Harrison, Ontario, NOG 1ZO. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody. Okay, anybody that wants to leave can leave. Next up, we have Sean from Black Horse Reserve, request for extension of term. Sean, you want to speak, and I have to go up here. I get a little closer, Sean, to the mic, because it picks you up on the news. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're acting in here. This is a whole video thing going on.
Yeah. I just wanted to introduce my brother and my business partner, Kyle Rosar. He'll give you a little introduction about himself before we get started.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you officially. I know I've met my brother before. So just to give you a little bit about my background, I'm a CPA, chartered professional accountant. So my experience in the last 10 years has been with the insurance industry for 5 years, working for Sun Life in Kitchener-Waterloo. And then 5 years before that, I was working in Ottawa on a large government contract for international defense. So that's kind of my background with the regulations and heavily regulated industries. So helping out on this case.
Thank you.
All right, so we move to the next slide. These are sort of the elements we're going to cover today in support of our request for the extension of our development covenant. And we'll move on to the next slide. Yes, so we would like to request from the town of Minto an extension for 1 year to our building development covenant to achieve a building permit. And that our extension have no fees applied as was originally agreed to in the purchase sale agreement. We plan to obviously update you in the future, but then to keep in close connection and communication with about our developments. And then, of course, that way, over the next year, you can continue to refine your decision on whether or not we should continue to, or we'll be able to develop in the future or not. We feel we've made good progress so far in our business, and we're going to show you what we've done so far today. So this is what I'm sure some of you have been interested in. The next slide is sort of where we've been. Obviously, this is an industry marked by change and lots of turbulence. We've been dealing with uncertainty and changing environments throughout. The biggest impact being Health Canada's change May 8th to their requirements for having the building complete before submitting your application. At that time, we still felt that we had a good plan and there was traction in the financing markets, so we'd be able to do so. We moved forward with our purchase of the lot June 3rd ended. It was also a good benefit because it's a big barrier. Next slide. Well, our plan was developed, and we continue to push forward with our entire network, looking for financing to build the project, even looking for a small investment to get started. We just could not find any investors that were willing to invest in our scale of project at that time. This was made worse by the vaping crisis that sort of materialized in the middle of our financing campaign in September, and that really stopped all investment in the cannabis industry completely, almost completely. In spite of this, we still continued our campaign with the OCMX, which is a Bay Street fundraising company, to try and raise the funds we needed. They're actually still presenting our pitch and offer to investors within their network. There just is no temperature change in terms of that financing at this time. So at that point, we decided to rethink our strategy. What do we do? The other industry headwind that we're dealing with while reviewing these things was the constant news and negative stories within the industry, things such as fraud, poor corporate management, overspending, etc. This has also created the double problem of not having anyone interested in investing at that time. So once we finished our campaign, pushed, raised funding, we had to find another way to raise or develop finances and continue to survive. So at that point, we evaluated all possible options, and what we came to was pivoting to a single part of the license classes that we were looking for. We were originally planning on microcultivation as well as microprocessing. Microprocessing seemed to lower the barrier to entry, so we moved in that direction. And now my brother will cover that part of it.
I'll just take it for this little section. So the first step of microprocessing was to find an established or suitable industrial unit. And so that's because of the bill requirement that Health Canada changed. So in order to continue and actually apply, you actually have to have that structure in place. So after thinking about whether that be possible on the lot and due to the coverage requirements and the cost of initial build, it just wasn't feasible, basically. So we did find an industrial unit in the Kitchener area, which is where we're based to begin with, and it was affordable and the landlord was friendly to cannabis, and that's one of the things that's really hard to find, and you need, for the application, you actually need their support and a written letter and everything. So we focused on that, and we did start the lease of the unit in March of 2020, and then in 3 months after that, we completed a complete overhaul and renovation of the main space so that we could apply for a license. We also had to rewrite a bunch of our application documentation, since microprocessing is a different license than cultivation, different requirements from Health Canada. So you can see some pictures here of this industrial space that we acquired or are leasing right now, and it was not in the greatest of shape, but after 3 months we cleaned it up pretty nicely, and we did end up submitting our application to Health Canada on July 17th of 2020, and we've gone through the first kind of 2 reviews. So the first one is they review your application for completeness, just to make sure you have all the pieces that you're supposed to have. And then upon passing that, they charge you the licensing fee, so we paid that, as well as then they move us through to security. So now we're being reviewed by RCMP right now, so we don't expect any issues with that, but you pay that fee, and it means that they won't likely hold up your license once they finish with their detailed review of all of our documentation. So that's where we are right now. We're just waiting for them to get into their detailed review of our application and complete it. And you can see that on the next slide is our finished space. So that's the same room that you saw just a minute ago after we've completely overhauled it, and it's ready for GMP or good manufacturing practices to create these products in a clean environment. And yeah, you can see that we did ductless main site for environmental controls, odor control, and air purification, as well as all surfaces have to be wipeable and cleanable. So same sort of thing we'd be doing once we build a facility out here. And then just the last comment on that is that, we finally had a direction to move on and a tangible place to go, and it took us only 6 months to get that done and our application submitted. So just showing that once we actually could do something, we got it done in a pretty efficient manner. Okay, and I'll pass it back to Sean for more of the strategic direction.
As you're probably wondering, great, we have a license application in, so what are we going to be doing with it? That supports lot development. Our plans for business development are kind of two-pronged, B2B and B2C, so business channel and business consumer. We've already been developing this two-channel approach. As we were planning with cultivation, we're looking for a larger partner and in conversation with some bigger LPs to provide contract manufacturing or other bulk manufacturing opportunities so that we can be sustainable. We see our role as a processor also with microprocessors to support other micros. A lot of micros are in a tough situation currently, so we really do want to advocate for them, and we've already gotten positive feedback from them in the industry. And then in addition, planning on building direct-to-consumer channels. So that's the branding that you see with Black Rose Reserve, high-quality products going through the provincial distribution as we planned originally. It's just going to take us a while to get there since it's quite complicated. And then, of course, the branding will support both of those channels. Slide, yep, so, sorry, yep, the business one. The idea being that developing a stable business, a sustainable business is really good for our long-term survival, and that's where we want those market partners. We've been talking to a number of LPs we had agreements with previously for supply, so we're working on developing that. Ideally, we're aiming to have a contract at least preliminarily negotiated before we get to license. But since the industry has had a lot of challenges, these other businesses are waiting more so for a committed license or a license. So maybe it won't come until we have that license, but we're already talking to a lot of them. As for the consumer channel, this is where we see our long-term high-value ability to grow the business. And this is what will support hopefully development of a lot long-term. There's a lot of value addition for changing flower into these other concentrates. So this is what we're planning on doing: salt-free, hash, rosin, other items, and processing for micros, so packaging and labeling the product. And that will be the other channel. In terms of our marketing and branding plan, It's essentially simple and very digital. We want people to be introduced to our brand from the website first. If you have a free moment, check out blackrosereserve.ca. It'll show you more about who we are and what we're planning on doing in the industry and how we want to work with partners. And then, of course, from that initial digital experience, delightful user experience in terms of how we execute on their brand or help them get to launch or produce the product they want to buy wholesale. We're sure that will help us sustain in the future. Yeah, so this takes us to sort of our vision for the lot going forward. We know we have communicated a particular idea for that, which was going to be the greenhouse, the location, and the processing space. And there's a lot of options, really. After many discussions about it, really this lot would afford opportunity for us to grow and scale in the future. There are many different ways we could feel it would fit with our future business development. It really depends on how we end up growing and where we see the opportunities that come to us as we grow. It could just be a processing facility. As we grow up into a full-scale processor, I'm not sure if this would be of interest, but also could be a micro-cultivation park with a few other micro-cultivators and other processing support on the property. So there's many options, but it really comes to what would be favorable to council in the future and able for us to be able to grow. As any business, we talked before, there's many challenges and risks. I did not expect cannabis to see two Black Swan events in a very short period of time. We have. We're still here, unlike many other companies that exist, including some local ones. So any of these could pose significant risks to us in the future. We've always managed our business with a risk mitigation viewpoint and careful decision making. So we think that we'll be able to continue to run the marathon and develop in the future. And so I'll give it off to the CPA for the budget.
Yeah, try to do the numbers. Numbers are pretty important to me and probably you guys as well too. So I did build a financial model of how we're going to be profitable with this license that we are in progress on, and how that's going to allow us to have the funds to grow to this lot and properly develop it. And besides all that, at any point, once we get our license, if we get the right partner, strategic partner, or investors start to pick up appetite again, we could just get funding in a very short period of time and start building out here as well. So I think the ceiling's very high on what we can do and when we can do it. So just going over the assumptions for the financial model first. So input costs and output prices, we basically taking a conservative approach on both of these. So we're saying we're going to sell these products in 6 months or even 8 months from now. And we're going to target a price that's lower than what the value of those is right now. And a lot of that is also from supply and demand. So the raw material right now is there's an oversupply from all the large LPs and all the large greenhouse spaces that were built out, as well as there's a bunch of outdoor coming now at the end of the season in October. So prices are going to hit rock bottom, and that's good for someone like us who's in a processing standpoint. At the same time, we still want to pay fair prices to get quality material from the right growers. But it is something that works in our favor. And then also the prices we're trying to sell it for on the other end. Again, we're going to target much lower, just so that our numbers, there's more upside in the numbers than possible downside. And then B2B partnerships. So industry licensals. Encourage LPs to work together because of the way they divided them. So cultivators, processors, and then you have a distribution network through the provinces, and then eventually those who are in the consumer. So just the way that all those tiers are built out, you can't have to work together, and that's why we're really targeting a B2B relationship to give us stability and start building out our brand in a consistent manner. And lots of LPs are willing to work with you. You just have to tell them what works for you and work through it with them and then come to an agreement. And we've already had some progress on that front. And it's just, I think like Sean said, a lot of people want to see that license and then they'll be ready to some agreements with us. So processing is a great place to be basically from that because we're kind of in the middle and people have to work with us if they want to get to that. Production costs. So we have very low overhead compared to other even smaller LPs. So that location you saw was not the very nice, ready for GMP production. So it was quite affordable, and that's an advantage for us since our overhead's really low. We don't need that many contracts to make money, basically. As well as the low cost of equipment and the low risk of costly errors. So because we're targeting a solventless process, it's basically using mechanical methods to separate the glands or the trichomes from the actual raw material, and all of the equipment used is very inexpensive compared to a CO2 critical process or other solvent-based processes. So that gives us an advantage on that front. And it's funny, but because it's solventless, it actually commands a higher price on the end market for the end consumer, because it's not solvent-based, so there's no potential solvents left in the material that could potentially harm the consumer. So it's actually what could be called healthier. I won't say healthy, but healthier. And then lastly, market demand. So small batch limited release products, can create that scarcity, that exclusivity. It's what a lot of customers do want, and it's not really available right now with what's on the market. So really, we're developing those partnerships as much as we can with the microcultivators and the ones that really know what they're doing, have the high quality products, so that quality in is going to be quality out, and we're going to have some of the best products on the market. And they should sell quickly is the goal. So financial projections for 2021, which we expect to get our license at the beginning of 2021. And through the partnership deals, we're targeting, on the previous side said, 50% to be a contract processing deal of some sort. And then the other 50% would be our in-house brand and capacity. We'll build that up slowly, and that's why you see the numbers increase from 2021 to 2023. Because we're building out those higher margin products that are our brand, and we're actually gonna take home more on those versus the contract processing side. So pretty healthy gross margins, and I just want to say we're being conservative again with the prices and what we're paying. So we're estimating to overpay what market is today for our inputs and under receive on the revenue side of the products and what they're valued at. So still very healthy gross margins and final profit after paying for everything on our overhead. Again, because our overhead is low, and we're only going to have a couple staff to begin. Any questions on financial projections, or we will go over questions for everything at the end, I guess?
Yeah, we may have to get going a little bit on it.
Okay.
I can't let you go past the time limit quite a bit, so.
Okay, we're almost done. I mean, the last couple
We're
slides.
quite interesting, but I'm just saying.
Okay. Yeah, the last couple slides are really just that there is a lot of positives that can come into effect. So the better we are in our processes, the higher those numbers can go. Market trends can work in our favor for these special products, the solventless products, and as well as what we're going to do with the land too, right? So if the market trends go that these are really great products and they're flying off the shelves, then we can expand faster and develop a larger processing lab here. And then investment. Basically, once we get that going, and we can show that we're profitable on every transaction, we have profitable contract manufacturing side of our business, and we have profitable products making it to market, then it should be pretty easy for us to get financing of some sort after that, even if it's just leveraging our AR, our accounts receivable. And I did put this capital projection, but I don't think we skip over that. But basically, we have enough capital to pay for our license, and then we're expecting our shareholders to put in enough money to get a good kickoff to get to market. So I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate the opportunity.
And Belinda, did you want to speak to the last question?
I think my report addresses the request. As I've mentioned, Terry and I have been in frequent communication with Sean, and he's been open, transparent the whole time. He's outlined very well the challenges to the industry, so they're not alone. So yeah, we're in support of extending it for another year and having them come back and present to us and see where we're at for the development of the industrial park. We have had a lot of interest lately, so
So maybe next year we won't be able to offer an extension, but at this point we're comfortable doing so.
Questions? I did one comment I have is exactly, I mean, Linda and Terry kept me up to date on this, and Sean, you've been very open, and I must give you guys a lot of credit for putting a really good proposal together. You're working hard on it. It's nice to see the entrepreneurship going on. Was there in your report you're saying to waive the fee?
Yeah, we've actually never charged that fee
Yeah,
before.
I was going to say that makes no sense.
Yeah, moving forward, we may want to look at doing that. But no, being that they're what they've gone through already in this industry, that's not going to be of any benefit. So we want to see this move forward, and are willing to support it in that way.
Well, if I can just make it, there's a recommendation here. If I read that, I get somebody to, I'll read the recommendation, then ask for a mover and a second report. Recommendation, the Council of the Town of Minto received the September 10th, 2020 report from the Business Economic Manager regarding the extension request for Black Rose Reserve, Inc. Approves 1-year extension to the terms of the original sale, and further that the performance deposit of 10% of the lot purchase price be waived. I have a mover and a second to that. Deputy Mayor Turton and Councilor Anderson. All in favor? Opposed? Did you? Question? Mark?
I did. But
Oh, sorry.
Linda answered most of it, but I think it's safe to say that we're all hope that our industrial parks are full of viable businesses. But as long as that clause exists, and I agree, why is it there if we're not going to impose it? And it is there, we shouldn't be picking and choosing who we apply it to. So
Well, I guess,
that's just my guess.
yeah, what Linda said, we've never actually charged it before. It's there. Maybe we should look at that at a different time, but maybe if they want to take it out, or you want to, whatever. We could do it that way too.
Well, I agree with that.
I don't think anybody's been charged it, Mark. That's what I'm-
No, but it's there, I don't know why we
I
have
know,
it if we're
I
not
know
going to
what
take
you're
it.
saying.
You know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you, guys. Good luck. Thank you. Eric, do you guys want to take a quick little break, or is anybody all good? Thanks, guys.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, nobody really wants to have a break, we're going to go ahead. Just to give you a heads up, the delegation is coming in. Nobody wearing masks, they all have exemptions for that, so we're going to have them all sit. And if they don't come on, go for a lot.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, you said they have exemptions for not wearing masks?
Oh, sorry, 20 for the alternate exemption on for I think our bylaw, our statement of 22 doesn't allow us to not go. But I just don't want everybody, for the sake, I know the people in the room aren't wearing masks, permitting masks, so I'm going to do that.
Are you ready? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay. Hello, Council for the Town of Minto. I stand here tonight as a resident who has deeply been impacted by the past 7 months. I stand here tonight at a time of unprecedented cancel culture and rampant censorship, and at a time when dissenting viewpoints are often screamed down or dismissed by accusations of murderous and sinister intentions. I stand before you despite this, because at this particular date it is still legally within my rights to share my viewpoint. And although I do fear that the end of this time is upon us, it is not within my being to sit back and say nothing as I see the moral fabric of our society being stripped away. This is for several reasons. I have never been that person. I was not raised to be that person. But it is also because I am a mother, and of all the many titles that I have held over my lifetime, This is not only my favorite, but it is the one which prevents me from sitting back while the future I have dreamt of for my children is replaced by one based upon fear of human contact, avoidance of interaction, removal of smiles, and increasingly draconian measures being enacted around the world. History has shown us the power of one person's voice, and so I stand here before you today to use mine. In the spirit of the town's code of conduct, which promotes morality, respectful debate, accountability, the exemplification of rural values, listening, questioning, responding to inquiries, concerns, and complaints in a timely manner, and supplying information, I'm here today to voice my concerns regarding the town's lack of information, transparency, response to inquiries, respectful debate, and failure to exemplify rural values. The town's website linked to COVID-19 has not been updated since the 12th of June. In the last 3 months, I find it extremely difficult to believe that there is no new information to share with residents to justify being under a state of emergency. I would like to know why an email sent to you on August 2nd was responded to by only one member of council who, despite her experience as a registered nurse, was unable to comprehend any of the questions asked, such as how many people in Minto have tested positive for COVID-19, and told the sender to simply trust them. This raises serious concerns for me, as this councillor was at one point a member of the Ontario Nurses Association, and although not a fan of presumptions, I feel it is safe to assume that this member is aware of her own association's 2 legal wins over the past 5 years regarding mandatory masking and the vaccinations because of the complete lack of evidence regarding both the efficacy of masking and its scarlet letter impact. Elections are held in order to maintain government accountability, and the insinuation that one should not question those governing, but just trust them, is ludicrous. If history has taught us anything, is that it is foolish to ignore governmental power grabs. What is particularly upsetting is that a member of council then forwarded the email to the town CAO who responded. The CAO's role is to act as a liaison between council and the employees of the town, not between council and its constituents. This is against Section 224 of the Municipal Act and Section 5 of the Town of Minto's Code of Conduct. Lower tiered or not, our unique rural community and people deserve to have a voice. You, the members of the council before me, are that voice. When the Romans postulated the rule of law, they set up a pyramid with a wide base in an effort to ensure that all viewpoints were considered and to avoid a dictatorship, a steep pyramid of power. So it is that we find ourselves at the bottom of that pyramid. But I find it extremely disconcerting that our town CAO sees our position as futile, when in fact it is the point. Orders which come from the top down is a dictatorship, not a democracy. To that end, I am here today to ask the council to stand up for the people within its lower tiered municipality and declare an end to the state of emergency in the town of Minto. After 7 months and only 2 deaths in Wellington County, it is time to empower our community and stand up for our constitutional and inalienable rights, regardless of whether or not the members of Wellington County Council wish to do so. The warden has made it clear to me that the County of Wellington has no plan, no criteria for an end to the emergency orders, but that we have in fact traded our powers of elected representatives before me to favor the will of one unelected person with a $350,000 salary who refuses to answer any questions and encourages us to police one another under one of the largest and most outrageous fine threats in the entire country. At the time of the mandate, we had 9 cases in Wellington County. We are unique. We should not be subject to mandates and restrictions on our freedoms that may or may not be warranted in larger urban areas. This is the erosion of our values, our way of life, and I would like that to end. And so I ask the council to fight for this amazing community that we have by declaring an end to the emergency orders in Minto. This would be based upon the fact that we have had 2 deaths in 7 months, the fact that the Assistant Medical Officer of Health for Ontario noted that the PCR tests being used are false positive at least half of the time, although the New York Times and the BBC recently reported it is closer to 80 or 90%. The knowledge that said PCR test was never intended for this use, the knowledge that the numbers announced include people who died with COVID, not from COVID, and the knowledge that up until April 2020 of this year, the history of medicine was clear on two things. The efficacy of masks was not proven, and asymptomatic transmission has never been a driver of infection. This is important because our CMO's list of sources for evidence to mask everyone has 31 resources, all of which I have read in their entirety. Only one of which was published prior to April 2020, 5 of which are preprints, which should not be used to guide clinical practice, 8 of which are opinions, 1 of which is a manuscript about whether or not hamsters get sick when a mask is placed between them, 1 of which has been refuted by 3 other independent papers, 1 of which highlights, and I quote, a key strategy to deactivate the built-in social rules of people by triggering an explicit counter-effect mechanism and so turning unconscious social behavior into conscious antisocial behavior, most of which are observational or based upon modeling, and none of which are random controlled trials because all of those conducted prior to 2020 state that there is no good evidence for masking. I stand before you as someone who believes in this town, its people, and the morality of public service, and ask that you return the power to the people of Minto. I am here to implore you to consider the mental health, economic growth, and sense of community we once enjoyed. I'm sorry that I'm unable to trust that you have my best interests at heart. I want to see actions which speak to that. I want you to respect the uniqueness of our rural position. I want you to consider the future of your children and grandchildren and to question the insanity of what is happening around us. I want you to be able to tell them, as when they ask, as I will for my children, that you stood up for their rights, their dreams, and their freedom. We need not separate ourselves as leaders, or we need to separate ourselves as leaders who have read the science for ourselves and know, not just the post-April 2020 science, which has been manipulated to fit a narrative, but the history of scientific knowledge, and who have understood that perpetuating unnecessary fear is detrimental to everyone and every fiber of our society. It only took one child yelling, "The emperor is naked," to expose the truth. I know that many may disagree with me, and I'm grateful that we are allowed to disagree. At least we were, and I will cling to that. Because I don't believe for one second that there's anyone in this room who has not questioned the logic of the rules of the lockdown. Why are you in danger of walking without a mask but are okay if you're sitting eating? Why aren't masks mandatory in federal buildings, including the CBC? If we want to protect the vulnerable, why are we denying them the comfort of their family while workers are free to come and go? Why did our small businesses need to close while the giants were essential and could remain open? Why does every country's COVID curve align with one another and every scientific study of curve infections for all conditions everywhere in the world? How many people have died from the measures alone? Why are we deferring all of our power to public health when it is not liable for any of its actions or advice? Do you understand that if public health is actually wrong about the risks of masking, that they are not responsible at all for that decision? I beg every one of you to keep asking questions and to genuinely seek out answers. I beg every one of you to read the science presented following this mandate in its entirety and judge for yourself. Look past the quantity of evidence and opinion and read its quality and then ask more questions. Then perhaps read and listen to the dissenting voices of the hundreds of scientists, academics, and doctors, many Nobel Prize winning, whose voices oppose the ones you've heard, and ask yourself why. We, the citizens of Minto, voted for you, not an unelected government official completely free of any liability for their advice and their actions. We do not consent to the removal of our body autonomy, our sacred doctor-patient relationship, or our own free will. And we are here today to appeal to every ounce of decency and bravery within you to rise up and fight for the people who elected you to protect our unique rural life. I understand your resistance. I know that these questions can be scary. It's very scary for me too. I am only one voice at the bottom of the big wide pyramid. But if history has taught me anything, it's that one voice can be enough. Thank you. questions?
At this point in time, I think, thank you for being here and voicing your concerns. And I'll also say, we need to get everybody's right to protest and talk to us. So we'll take your comments under advisement and go from there. Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, town council receives correspondence and information. All in favor of that? Okay. Anybody want to pull anything out of the correspondence? Interesting read on this on the Great Lakes, but it's a little deep. That's what I thought it was a little deep.
We just received that information, Joe.
There's a lot of information.
A lot of information. Okay, leave that and back to Forest Committees. Forest Committees and Town Staff matters tabled and motions for which notice has been given. The minutes for approval, we have none. Staff reports. And we now turn this over to Councilor Elliott. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much. And welcome, Matt. We had a bit of a meeting last night with the track committee, and that's over what I agreed to.
So thank you, Councilor Elliott. I've got two reports here tonight. The first is just some feedback from our pool and day camp season that we received through email, through Engagement, and just wanted to touch on it. We typically don't get this much positive feedback in the summer season. I think that had a lot to do with, mostly had to do with the fact that we were able to run our pools and run our day camp. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of some of the comments that came in, so you can see them there. And if there's any questions about that.
Sure.
No.
I was, you can see what the next thing was.
Councilor Elliott, you have some questions from?
Yes.
The two of us.
Okay, go ahead.
Just throw something out.
I was studying.
That's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I heard really good comments about how safe the program was at the pools and at the day camp as well. And a lot of our area adjoining municipalities and so on didn't take the risk. And but I think that we did a good job of providing those programs for people and making them safe. And I honestly thought there'd be a lot of complaints about, lineups at the pool and only letting so many people in and all that kind of thing, but people seem to be really decent to each other. And so I just wanted to say that I think you did a good job of making people feel safe.
Yeah, certainly the staff did a terrific job of following the protocols. It was great to have the Lake Saving Society documents as well as the public health guidance on summer day camps. So those came in handy and we were able to achieve that. And all the credit goes to the pool and the day camp and the facility staff.
And I just wanted to almost the same to what Councilor Pearson said. And it was nice to see that the staff were well thought of, because they were going through a tough time having to deal with all the issues that you have to deal with. And I know Jess talked about the fact that it was nice to have that day camp thing. This has been a good opportunity to really practice what they're doing with their school program now and what kids are going to school and give the kids a learning experience too, which if they didn't have that this summer, they would have been away from kids for 4 months, 5 months, going into school and back to, so this fact that they had to do certain things to keep you safe, so that was kind of a good training thing. So good, and also that the council allowed that to happen, because it wasn't an easy decision for us to make. I know we looked at it, and we figured if we do it safely enough, we trusted the staff to do it, and I really feel good that they came through.
Anybody else? Just my comment would be, man, I'm just wondering how close we are in budget. Did it change at all, and what our deficit will be?
Just regarding the budget, that's something that we'll look at come November when we start to look at budget 2021. We did have extra staff scheduled, and the ratios for day camp were lower. That said, at the pools, we got off to about a 4-week delay, or there was a 4-week delay in the start of the season, so I think overall that's going to help offset that. Plus, we did pick up a couple of grants through Canada Summer Jobs that helped out also, so we'll get into that in more detail come budget time. Yeah. I just wanted to focus on the positive feedback tonight.
Yep.
Just on the budget, remember we got $231,000 from the province.
Oh, certainly.
But the idea being to offset some of those things that we did that we knew we weren't going to make that kind of money back. So
We'll do this every year. It's cheaper.
yeah. I don't know if the government was agreeing with that. But that's part of the reason.
Gee.
Just a comment, I was one of the detractors from it because I was concerned about the safety of the kids, but kudos to you guys. I'm quite willing to admit when I was wrong, and I was wrong on this one. You guys did a great job. And definitely the children needed the outlet and the opportunity to get together, and I recognized that right away. I was just concerned about the spread of the virus. But
We all
good work. Well done.
We all were worried about that.
Yeah, the community was remarkable in terms of just adapting to some of the changes that we had to make it happen.
We were the envy of many communities around the area that didn't do what you people did. That took a lot of work, and we as a council, I'm sure, appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Second report that I have is just with regard to a quick update for the ice season. The ice is now installed in Palmerston as of yesterday, and Norwell's grade 9 hockey program has begun. They were able to make some adjustments because the high schools are quadmestering this year. But the grade 9 program runs from now until I think late October, and then the grade 11 program will start, and that runs until the end of the second quadmester, which is just after Christmas. Forecasted demand for ice would call for a second sheet in October, but as of now, not for a third. We've been in contact with the Clifford Skating Club and the Harrison Skating Club, as we need to start giving them parameters to work with as they try and seek registrations for this season. So with one of the ice being in Palmerston, one of the clubs will need to change venues if they plan to start in October, and we only plan to install one sheet for now. So our plan, as you'll see in the report, is to install ice in Harrison next, which means looking into alternative arrangements with the Clifford Skating Club and a couple of other local groups or renters that we have in Clifford. We've been in contact with them, and we will work to relocate them to Harrison. I just want to reiterate, though, that this current plan of action is for this year only. I mean, a lot can change in a month, and we need to give ourselves and our group something to work with. So our plan would be, if all goes well, we would have ice here as of Tuesday, October the 13th, the day after Thanksgiving Monday.
Questions? Comments? Questions? I think you did such a good job with the pools that obviously we're going to trust your judgment on that.
You have to do the recommendations for the...
Yeah, I didn't know that. We got 2 recommendations.
Just let us know.
So the first recommendation that the council, the town will receive the record of community service report regarding community feedback, tools, and day camp as information. I need a mover and a second. Mayor George and Jeff. Hudson. All in favor? The second would be the council town member receive the draft community service report regarding facility operation as information. Move in a second. Jean? Mark?
I just feel like there's going to be some feedback on this. And I don't think there's a right answer to this. Like, it doesn't matter what we do, somebody's not going to be happy. So I guess, you know, I think we should be pleading for understanding maybe. Because these are difficult times, whether we're wearing masks or not. And, I mean, I feel like I can sit here and I can argue it either way. Should it be Harrison, should it be Clifford? Because guys, like, it's a really difficult thing, I think. And, but anyways, I'm sure that you, with our staff and our prac committee has gone through it. So, anyways, I'm willing to go this way, but like I said, it is a difficult thing.
Just we had a prac meeting last night, and we got representatives across window on that prac meeting during Clifford, and there didn't seem to be any dissent at the meeting. We certainly had that kind of discussion, and that was brought forward, but the reasoning behind what we're doing trumped where and what it was going to be. So prac as a committee kind of agreed with Matt and Greg that this is the right way to go.
Just to comment on that, I totally agree with Councilor Dorsey. This is not an easy thing because we sort of set an expectation that we had 2 more ices up. But I think people will realize that, one, if these groups can't actually use the ice, then are we putting it in and having it sit there? So down the road, depending on what happens here, and I'm really concerned about a second wave, and I'm not sure we're going to into that, but what happens if we do have a backup here? If we just have the 2 in, then we might need the other facility to do some indoor stuff for walking and whatever. And I think you guys are looking at the possibility of one of them putting heaters in one of them just in case we want to do that. So I think one of them might this year have to be repurposed for a non-ice thing, just from that standpoint. If it works out that everything gets going really well, then we can get the ice in as quick as we can. And I know we staggered it a few years back because we realized that but we always had Palmerston first, and then both Clifford and Harrison went in at the same time after the fair, and then we took Clifford out a little earlier sometimes, depending on what was on. So I think the staff have to come back to us, and I think this will be an ongoing thing going forward. So if you do get feedback, tell people we're listening all the time. If we can fill the time, it's just that, it's going to be difficult because I don't know if hockey can even give us a real commitment. They're giving us some commitment. Skating's looking at it. Room ball can't do it right now. And I don't want to necessarily put the ice in for groups that are coming out of town. If that's all it is. Because we never make back on the hourly rate. Whether it's kids and whatever. We give them subsidies.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to make sure that people just didn't think that we, moved, seconded, and passed it.
Yeah,
without a second thought. So I think it's important that people know that it's something that we struggle with, right? It's difficult.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Chair. I think people are going to look at this as an opportunity for them to get out of their homes and go skating and do different things. I think it has a lot of similarities to the pools, and I think it's a good thing. And if we can get 2 arenas going and keep them going this winter, it's wonderful. Next year is totally different. We're in a situation which we've never been in before. So you have my backing on this.
I appreciate that. With respect to the pool, the day camp, and now the arenas, I hope we don't have to go through as much as we've had to this year. That being said, if we can get people out, we can get them active, it's well worth it in the end. It's been a year like no other that I've been here.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, and we have a mover and a seconder, is it correct? All in favor? Carried. And I'm very sure of that, Mayor.
Thank you. And I will then call on who's doing it? Terry? CEO.
Great.
So my first report is for a site plan approval application by an Ontario Limited company. That company is owned by Wayne and Lori Dittner. The site has 3 zones on it, a high-density residential zone, a flood fringe, and a floodway zone on it. Currently comprised of a residential 6-plex rental building and a 5-plex, which you can see up there on the screen. We did pass an amended site plan approval application last year in June for the building that you can see again that was constructed late last year. And hopefully recall in August we approved a minor variance to allow the development of the next building. So staff and our engineer met, went through the site design, layout, and functionality, and are in general generally acceptable to that development the way that the plan is drawn. Our engineer did have a couple of not last minute, but outstanding items, and we rolled those into the site plan approval agreement. So they're very minor items like hammering the existing sanitary and items like that, and they're tied to milestones, so the development can only go so far until those have to be addressed. And then you can proceed after that. Financial consideration on this one, there's still some off-site work that is required to be completed. And as we have been doing in the recent past, is we've been taking 100% of the security of the cost of those external works as a security for the development. So my recommendation is sorry, that's the wrong one, so that didn't make sense. That you receive my report dated September 8th and approves the site plan prepared by Wilson Ford and allows for the execution of the site plan agreement and passes a bylaw in session.
Questions? Okay. I have a mover and a seconder. Ron, Judy. Moved by Judy and seconded by Ron. Council of Town of Minto receives the Chief Building Official's report dated September 8, 2020 and approves the site plan prepared by Wilson Ford Surveying and Engineering. Further, the owner executes with the town a site plan agreement requiring completion of the works 1 year from the issuance of the final occupancy permit. And further, that the council considers passing a bylaw in regular session authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the site plan agreement once landowner is signed. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So my next report, I'm doing this one for Michelle. Yep. It is for a consent application that was circulated to us by the county. The proposal is for a surplus farm dwelling severance, where they're taking the residential dwelling and severing it off of the farmland. So the residential lot that will be created is about 2.5 acres. And that would leave about 201.4 acres as predominantly farmland. There is a little bit of bush on that land as well. So staff and our engineer, we met, are in general support of the application. There are some conditions that we are recommending you pass, and we move those forward to the county. So the first one is their standard financial consideration, that all external costs with us processing this application are paid, as well as if there's any outstanding accounts by the owner, that those get cleared up as well. Public Works would like just to ensure that proper access to both the severed and retained parcels are available, as well as the new drainage assessment schedule to be approved by Public Works. For the building department, we just want the standard zoning confirmation comment on there, as well as the septic system in this case crosses over the property line, which that can't happen. So we will require that septic system to be decommissioned and then relocated onto the residential parcel. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Judy and Jean. And I'll read, you want me to read this all over again? The Council of Town of Minto recommends the County of Wellington Land Division Committee approve the severance application B5320 Van Den Farms Limited, Concession 1, Park Lot 35, and Concession 2, Lot 35, Town of Minto. The following conditions be considered: that the applicant satisfies all requirements of the Town of Minto, financial and otherwise, which the town may deem to be necessary for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including the payment of any monies owed to the Town of Minto, and that all accounts are in good standing. The applicant obtains written confirmation from the Town of Minto Public Works Department that the satisfactory access arrangements to the subject lands have been made prior to the issuance of the building permit, and that the applicant supplies to the Town of Minto proof that the new drainage assessment schedule has been approved to ensure the reapportionment of the applicable municipal drains to be completed to the satisfaction of the local municipality, and that the applicant obtains a written statement from the Town of Minto confirming the proposed lots and its associated land uses, buildings, and structures comply with all applicant requirements in the Town of Minto. That this includes proof that the existing septic system has been decommissioned and the new septic system is installed. That's a lot. Everybody for that?
Yes, that's correct.
And just before I go on, I just say, Michelle's at the back there. That was your report, Michelle. And I just wanted to give the council an opportunity to thank you for your time with us and the fact that, have you started with Mapleton yet?
As of yesterday.
As of yesterday. So you're down in Mapleton, and I know you did really well down there in your new role. So. I think it really bodes well that for province or provincial government or federal government and municipalities can work together in this pandemic. So it really helps our ratepayers on that. So I just want to point that one out. But I'll bring you a full report at the next meeting. Okay. Anything else? Okay, motion to return to regular council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Turner, second by Councilor Elliott. The committee of the whole meets the regular council. All in favor? Any notice of the motion? Resolution adopting proceedings of the committee of the whole. Moved by Councilor Gunson, second by Councilor Durson, that the council of the Town of Minto ratifies the motions made in the committee of the whole. All in favor? Carried. Bylaws 2020-63 site plan agreement 948193 Ontario Limited. Moved by Councilor McKenzie, second by Councilor Anderson, that the bylaw number 2020-63 to authorize the execution of the site plan agreement with 948193 Ontario Limited for the proposed development on Arthur Street, West Harrison, be introduced, read, first, second, and third time, passed by the Council, Seal Corporation. All in favor? 2020-64 signing officers for the Town of Minto. Moved by Councilor Elliott, second by Deputy Mayor Turton, that bylaw number 2020-64 will appoint the signing officers for the Town of Minto be introduced and read, first, second, and third time, and passed by the Council and Seal Corporation. All in favor? 2020-65 confirmatory. Moved by Councilor Dirksen, second by Councilor Gunson, that the bylaw number 2020-65 confirm the actions of the Council of the Corporation of Town of Minto be introduced, read, first, second, and third time, and passed on the Council of Seal Corporation. All in favor? Adjournment. Moved by Councilor Anderson, second by Councilor McKenzie, that the Council of the Town of Minto adjourns to meet again at the call of the mayor. All in favor? Thank you. Thanks, everybody.